Welcome to Leadership Bites with myself, your host, Guy Bloom. This is a leadership podcast where I have conversations with colleagues, I chat with guests, and sometimes there'll be just me talking. You can connect with me at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and please tell everyone. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly that. Yeah. Right, you got to stop mucking about now. That's the thing. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so listen, Michele, it is fantastic to have you on this episode of Leadership Bites. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Guy. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, I was really excited to have you on. Obviously, I do know who you are, but just for anybody that doesn't know who you are, then just introduce yourself and set the context for what you're about, and then we'll get into the podcast.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Michele Graglia. I am originally from Italy. I now reside in the US, and I am, I guess I consider myself an ultra runner.
Okay.
And recently author too.
Yeah. And that's good because having done a book myself, some people say, oh, it's dead easy. I just sat down and wrote it. Well, mine literally did my head in. So I found it massively cathartic, but I also found it quite complex because, it's the curse of knowledge, right? You know what you know, but you've got to get it out. So well done.
Well, it was definitely a journey, I got to tell you.
And that's what I want to hear about. So this is the big thing. It's called Ultra, which is just a great starting point. But Ultra, top model, and there's something we're going to talk about, top model to top ultra runner. So
correct.
That's what we're going to look at. So do you know what? There's a beautiful thing about books covers, and if they pull you in the right way, and it's telling me there's a story. I do know what the story is, but I'm going to start with that. We're going to get to top ultra runner. We're going to get to top ultra runner.
Yep.
But I want you to bring to life what top model was, what it meant, and what it did to you.
Absolutely.
And let's go there.
Yes, I'm going to dive in a little, start off from the beginning. Let's say, I was born and raised in Italy, as I just mentioned. And, I come from a small town, 5,000 souls, little town in the inland of the Italian Riviera, very close to the French border. And, right after the studies, I had the great fortune to be able to start working for my family business. My parents own a flower, ornamental greens and flowers export company. And, I pretty much was raised in that environment. So to me, it was a very easy transition. I started learning different languages, and it was very, very exciting time of my life because, I was able to work and live with, work with my parents and learn from them. And, we had a wonderful relationship. So it was a great time. And along with that, the business in itself was exciting. I had the opportunity to travel pretty much anywhere from California to Japan and everything in between. So, 20, 21, 22 years old, going out in suit and tie and looking all sharp, it was pretty fun, pretty exciting. And when things started picking up, you got a pretty good financial reward too. So that adds up to the whole thing. Fast forward to about 2007, I was 24 years old. And I decided the situation allowed me to think about a move. I decided to spend maybe 6 months to a year in the US, specifically Miami, which was our main port of entry at the time down in Florida. And, I'm like, okay, Miami doesn't sound too bad. Along with that, I can perhaps, of course, improve the language, expand the business, and why not even open up a branch? So I take the leap. I take this flight across the ocean, across the pond, and I find myself in South Beach right in September 2009. And, it's one of those sliding door type of situations. You find yourself at the right place at the right time. And that one specific day, I was still sleeping on a friend's couch, looking for apartments. And I got caught by a thunderstorm, dove the first bar across the street. And right then, I got scouted by one of the most famous director of one of the most famous agencies in the world at the time. And, one thing led to another. That day I walked out of her office with a contract in hand. and my life changed completely. It took a turn 360, like real fast. Everything changed. I got thrown into this industry. The very next day I started shooting, and it was a life-changing moment. In a very short period of time, I decided to leave the business and focus entirely on that career. And along with that, of course, you think about, it was almost like a movie, literally. You're presented with this great opportunity, just arrived in a big city, and then presented with all these great perks that come with it. The social, the lifestyle, getting introduced to the social lives, partying with celebrities. Because you're a model, all the restaurant owners want you here, the PRs want you there, the club owners give you bottles and tables and everything. So, 24, 25 years old, hey, felt like the king of the world. And, the other side of the coin is, of course, that lifestyle presents, the whole lifestyle of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It sounded pretty fun at the time, but of course, it's also a downward spiral. And I'm going pretty fast through this section just because then we can dive in if you like. But I came quickly to the realization that that lifestyle was absolutely weighing on me, was absolutely detrimental. Didn't matter how glamorous or fancy or it was kind of it was the portrait of the fancy lifestyle, right? Like they show in movies. You party in the clubs, you party in the yachts, you party in the mansions, and everything is fun and handed out. But then the day by day life and dealing with the negative effects of alcohol and drugs, of course, eventually brought me to a breaking point. And that's when I decided I knew I couldn't deal with it, because if you're in a sick environment, you're bound to stay sick. Doesn't matter how much you want to rise out of that mold. And so I packed my stuff and I decided to leave. At the time, my career was growing, so I'm like, I moved to New York, I get out of the environment, and I focus entirely on my modeling career, which was literally blooming at the time. I started working with the top photographers in the world, some of the top brands in the fashion industry. And, life was good. I had an apartment in South Beach, I had an apartment in Manhattan. I was, I had my fancy things. I had my, all the good things that they tell you we need to achieve, right? The image of success. I got this, I got that. But then eventually I got to even greater breaking point, just because it wasn't necessarily just a lifestyle. It was literally what I was doing and who I was becoming that I wasn't content with. I couldn't find purpose. I couldn't find fulfillment in what I was doing. And so that specific chapter of my life became the most challenging. It became the most difficult time of my life, just because, again, I was very unhappy. Didn't matter how much stuff I got. Didn't matter what, how fancy or glamorous my lifestyle might have seemed from the outside. I just fell into a very deep depression and situation where I was severely discontent. And that brought me to a cold spring night in 2009, coming off of a party full with celebrities, where I, walked back home, and in a moment of silence, and I would say probably the most cathartic night of my life, I sat outside the windowsill of my 15th floor apartment. And, I contemplated ending it all there. I just couldn't find any sense in what I was doing and who I was becoming. And those are, when you confront yourself at that level, you either fall or you rise. When you're at the bottom of the pit, there's only one way, and that's looking up. And thankfully, thanks to, I would say, the love of my family that came to mind in that moment, I took a step back and I understood that I could have changed. I knew that, didn't matter how dissatisfied I was in that moment, mind, I was still 27 years old, so a little early for a midlife crisis. But, it was definitely a moment of great introspection, where I allowed myself to come to the conclusion that life wasn't for me. Didn't matter how big of an American dream that was, I was absolutely committed at that point to, it literally allowed me to change the perspective. And I was committed from that point to make a change.
So you were, and these are my words, so change them to make them your own. But I'm hearing you were hollow at that point.
Absolutely hollow, absolutely empty. I felt absolutely disconnected. I felt alone. And, it's always so challenging to talk about, suicide, but this is the reality of our times. We don't have great depressions. We don't have wars, but I think the great plague of our generations is suicide. I mean, the numbers, it's a leading cause of death in the US. I'm not sure in the Europe, I didn't look at the charts, but it's because I believe that our social environment, our social construct is so focused on material gain and social status that we forget what's important. So we keep on pursuing this facade, but then when you go through that door, you realize it's empty, or at least that's what I realized. And that brought me to the breaking point where it was either end it all or you need to make a change. There was no other option. And that's when I think, it's a natural thing if you think about it. In an evolutionary standpoint, evolution and change only happens in a moment of distress. You need to make a change because what you're doing right now doesn't work anymore. So you need to adapt to the situation. And to me, that adaptation was understanding that I needed to change my life completely and find something that would give me purpose.
There's a great phrase by somebody who I should know who said it, but I don't. And there's nothing worse than feeling alone in a crowded room.
That resonates with me loudly for the fact that, I used to say this all the time when I was there. I live in New York. We're on a small island of 8+ million people, and I never felt so alone. It was unreal. And so, at that point, change is always difficult. Living who you are and discover who you're going to become took some time. It took a lot more introspection. It took a lot of research. Thankfully, I got to tell you, I kind of retraced back to my roots, the passion. I was very fortunate and privileged to be introduced to nature from a very, very, very young age. My family instilled that deep passion and connection to the outdoors. We lived right there at the beginning of the Alps, so by the Mediterranean Sea. So I had to enjoy the coast, but then we also had the privilege to hike the Dolomites in the summer, ski the Alps in the winter. So I felt that I felt almost like a call of the wild at that point when I was living in the concrete jungle of New York. I was like, okay, I know that I'm not in the right place. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. I know life has something greater for me.
You were kind of like Crocodile Dundee. You were in the wrong environment, right?
Exactly. That's not a knife. I didn't have the knife there, but I very much started sensing that, and I needed to find an outlet. So I started digging into adventure and exploration at any level. I started reading books, watching documentaries. I mean, piled up tons of books and watching, stuff about big mountain climbers, big river swimmers, ocean rowers, all these things. Everything was exciting. Nothing spoke to me. Eventually, after over a year and a half of research, by chance, I stumbled upon this book called Ultra Marathon Man by Dean Karnazes. And that one specific day, Christmas time, 2010, my whole life changed again. I was introduced to a world I didn't even know existed. I knew marathons, but I didn't know what ultra marathons were. And this whole concept of going beyond the physical, going beyond running, literally, and transcending your physicality became such a huge fascination that I was for whatever reason, it didn't make any sense at the time, but I was so committed to try it, to be part of it. And for the fact that the words that the author shared resonated with me greatly. We came from different paths, but we came to the same conclusion. He had this breaking point at 30 years old. I was 27. He was a successful businessman working for a Fortune 500 company. I was a successful model. We both achieved that material success, and both were absolutely discontent with who we were and what we were doing. And so I'm like, if it worked for him, he discovered his whole world and he dedicated himself and he made it his whole life, his lifestyle. It became his career. And I'm like, if he did it, why can't I? So I bought a pair of shoes, started running laps in Central Park, and fast forward 11 years later, guy, we're here talking.
It's a story of rebirth, I guess.
It is absolutely right. I was reborn. I cannot give you an exact date, but I was the end of April 2009 on that windowsill. That was my second birthday.
And just to help me understand, because the grand old age of 52, I've met a lot of people now, and it helps me just contextualize from what other people have gone through.
Yeah.
At that moment of, sitting outside your 15-story apartment kind of, and having a moment of, an existential crisis in essence.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And just going, what's my purpose? Is this it? And, and that hollow state. Was there any addiction linked to that as well at the time? Or no, look, there was stuff going on, but it's stuff I could walk away from, or no, that was an integral part of my reality as well.
That I'd never been into drugs, before I moved to Miami. I would go to, of course, we all party. We all had a few.
I know. I've been to Miami. I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but before moving to Florida, I lived in a somewhat very safe and good environment. Of course, with my friends, we'll go out party, we have fun, but it was always within the lines. Let's say.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Miami, to me, it was like 0 to 100, like
it's off the scale. Yeah.
Off the scale, out of control. So I got introduced to that. It's always funny how things work, because you really become the product of your environment. And, to me, it was so absurd when I initially got there to see that everybody were completely out of control.
Yeah.
But then after a certain period of time, I became just like that, because it's every day's bread.
You acclimatized.
Exactly, you're acclimatized to that. You live in that bubble. Everybody's doing the same thing, so you're like, it's not that bad. And then you end up doing it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week, and partying every night.
It normalizes.
And then it normalizes. But then there has, at least for me, there was a moment of awakening, almost like an alarm ringing. I'm like, hey, you're getting out of control here. You're spiraling down, and the examples out there are so numerous that you have some sort of guidance saying, okay, maybe you should take a step back. So when I moved out, I knew that being in that environment, I couldn't have climbed out, because if everybody again is doing it, you're going to be the only one not doing it. That's not going to be fun at all. So I took a step and I left and I went to New York.
Okay, I'm going to need you to hold your microphone.
Oh yeah, sorry.
It's just banging against you. So I'm
apologize.
losing. Yeah, no, don't apologize. Your enthusiasm is infectious, so I love it. But just if it's audio only, it's going to drive people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So okay. So that was just, that was the environment. You understood where you were. Yeah. Okay. You were swimming in the swimming pool kind of thing.
Exactly.
But
you're bound to get wet.
You're going to get wet. It is what it is. But what happened was very much just it was an internal moment, as opposed to, I'm out of control in other ways. So I see that. I like this idea of searching, of this, if there's when you kind of think of the Greek art of storytelling, the hero of the moment,
hero's journey,
the hero's journey, right? And part of that is searching for meaning, or searching for purpose, or searching for, whatever it might be. And I kind of get it, in the sense of what I observe in others, and in myself, is in some respects you could have never read that book. You may have never, I mean, that energy may have gone somewhere else.
Absolutely. I recognize that.
Also, it may not have done, as in you don't find the thing that helps you move forward. And there it is. It's just in the next book or it's in the next conversation. But that willingness to look and search is something I see people give up on. They stay, they find a level, but I wouldn't say that it's not about living life happy all the time. We're not that, but just they've lost a contentment or a passion.
Contentment is the right word. Yeah. I think that, I hear this all the time. I hear a lot of friends that are in a, sometimes I connect with old friends that are somewhat stuck in a situation. They're like, you're so lucky you found your calling, you found your, something that gives you purpose every single day. And I'm like, it's not like it hit me. I was out there looking for it.
I
definitely went out there searching for it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I was, as I said before, when you have no other choice, you have to do it. And the problem is a lot of people, and I think the majority of people tend to stick to their comfort zone. You stick to the comfort and you stick to the sense of securities that you have around you. And so you don't take the step, you don't take that chance to look outside, see what's possible, and venture out there and go for it. That's the step that most people lack. And this is the most important step, in my opinion. I'm very much drawn to Eastern philosophy and all of that. There was a great saying, there was a great metaphor that a Buddhist monk brought up several years ago. And he was saying, humans are like crabs. Think about it. A crab, it's a certain size. It comes a time in its life where the shell, that it becomes confined, it becomes tight. And that's where most people live. Most people live in that tight shell. They know they are unhappy, they know they're uncomfortable, but it's safe. And you don't take the chance to break that shell, be vulnerable for a certain period of time, be very uncomfortable. But then eventually you create your biggest shell and you allow yourself to grow, you allow yourself to expand, and you allow yourself to live a richer life, a better life. So it's that one step that is necessary. The problem is our social construct doesn't I don't want to say doesn't allow it, but doesn't push you to do that. Doesn't guide you to do that. It's a step that we have to consciously take personally. And to me, it came out of a moment of great dissatisfaction and the stress, I would say, that change was absolutely necessary, because my life was at stake in that very moment.
Thoreau said something like,
most men live
lives of quiet desperation.
That's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah.
And that very much resonates with what we were talking about right now. Yeah. It's, you live in that let's be real. We have nothing. We cannot control nothing. Everything is just, it's a fake sense of control, just as much as the false sense of securities. But that sense of securities is comforting in a way, but it's also a chain, because you're afraid to leave what you have, who you are, to discover what you're going to become. It's a step in the unknown. It's about venturing in the unknown to grow, develop yourself, and find out how resilient and strong we can actually be. It's almost like, I call it this almost like a personal exploration. Back in the days, we had explorers that venture outside the castle and to explore new lands and conquer new oceans and tag new mountains. But nowadays, and speaking about our generation in particular, we have come to a time where all the lands have been explored, all the big mountains have been tagged, all the oceans and islands have been explored. I feel that the new true exploration of our time is the exploration of the self. digging within to discover our true strength, not as singles, but as human beings, as a species. And to me, being part of that have become a life, it's become the purpose of my existence.
The analogy I bring to that is that every couple of years you should look in your wardrobe and check that the clothes still suit you.
Yeah, that's great.
And the same thing is for the who you are in life. You should, and what you're getting from life and what you're giving to life and what the life is meaning to you. It's because, every couple of years, most of us are growing up a little bit, or we've got new insights, or we're in a new place and stuff's happened to us. I mean, it should be like that. So that review that, are these trousers, they're very comfortable, but they're from the 1970s or whatever it is, So, but the way I'm behaving, that was true when I was 20, but I'm 25 now, or I'm 28 now, I'm 32 now, or I'm 52 now, whatever it is. Yeah. So does this behavior, do these beliefs, does the way I'm living, does it suit me? Does it fit me? And I think you're right. There's quite a few metaphors and analogies we could bring to this, but there is a comfort. And I do think that it's interesting when you look at human dynamics. There are I was speaking to Chris Swanson, who's Sheriff Chris Swanson. He was the guy who, when they had the George Floyd riots, he was the policeman that took off all his uniform stuff and walked with them. I don't know if you saw that, but he was
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, they're all literally a mob of people literally about to lose their marbles, and he sort of said, all right, and he took off all his riot gear and he said, I'm going to walk with you. Mm-hmm. And he changed the entire dynamic. Fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He would verbalize that he's a hard charger. He goes at life. He's
straight on. Yeah.
Straight on. He is a Ironman athlete. He runs the police department of Michigan. Flint. He preaches on Sunday because he's a spiritual guy. He's got a couple of books out. And you think, dude,
wow.
And he's amazing. Amazing character, but he's a hard charger. He's happy with change because his whole life is about not so much what next, but let's move forward. Let's move forward. And then, of course, you've got those at the other end of that spectrum, and with everybody in between. You've got that. I'm looking for comfort. I'm looking for safety. I'm looking to not be exposed. I'm fearful of that. And we're all in there somewhere on that spectrum, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to be at the forefront of that, and having that approach to life, because you're vulnerable. You put yourself out there, and that's a scary part. But I think that the message that is the most worthwhile in our time is that it is absolutely necessary. Not just because, of course, it's going to allow you to grow as a person and develop and live a richer life with more meaning, more contentment, which eventually is going to also open you up to a more grateful and kinder self, which, it's also, it's going to better the world and the lives of people around you. But I think that the greatest thing that we can do for ourselves and for our society is pose as inspiration to show what's possible. So stretching our boundaries to show those that are fearful of making the step that you can too do it. And the reason why I've written this book and I share my story is because if you think about it, it is so absurd that that a guy that was a model living the lifestyle could even think about becoming a professional runner and making his life. But because of the stories that inspire me throughout my journey, and that concept that if you really want to, you can do it. I believed this so much that I actually made it. And that's so absurd to me that I wanted to share that, because at every level, every level of the spectrum, you can change your life. If you're not happy, you can pick yourself up. You can you can work hard for it and you can achieve whatever you set your mind to. Doesn't matter, of course, I come from this discipline or ultra running, but the lessons that I share in the book and what I learned along the way is, transcends the sport and become, you can pretty much use those in every endeavor in life, whether it's business, career, relationships, and whatever.
So let's jump to that. And I've now, I think this is 68 episodes into podcasting, so I've now got to the point where I see some truths coming out in what people say.
Yeah.
And,
there are common traits. For sure.
Exactly. So I teach martial arts, and guess what? It could be I teach horse riding. It wouldn't matter what I said. It's just, look, there are some things. If you're going to be a really good horse rider, if you're going to be a really good table tennis player,
yes,
then it doesn't matter. Insert thing here. There's something inherently true about anybody that wants to get better at something. So let's move into the book. If I was going to read the book, what am I reading? Am I reading your journey to where you are now? Am I reading, that maybe, or am I reading, no, if I wanted to be an ultra runner, or am I reading, actually, no, yes, all of those things, but also if I just want to read something that gives me a bit of a template for thinking and operating in the world. So if I was going to pick up the book, what am I going to get out of it? Because I want to pick up the book now, right? So what am I going to read?
Yeah. Well, it's I would choose the easiest answer, which will be all of those. I'm not, I didn't write a book necessarily for runners, for ultra runners. Of course, those that love running are going to enjoy the reads because the story, he has that journey coming from Italy, becoming a model, but those are like just a few chapters because the greatest teachings came, the greatest lessons came after that breaking point, after that time where I didn't change, after the time I started pursuing something. And through the adventures that I share, through the races that I share, those are just, as you say, those are just templates. Those are just, you can take that out and insert whatever, it can be, as you said, martial arts, it can be climbing, it can be open up a business, launching something. It's about everything that I discovered along the way. And those lessons allow me to not only develop myself, but pursue a bigger vision, develop myself into a better version of myself constantly. And that, to me, is the purpose that I found in what I'm doing. It's about not taking the limitation that they were presented with for granted and literally walk out there in the unknown, like we said before, as an adventurer, as an explorer, to discover for myself how far I can actually go or what I'm capable of. Because it's only in that journey that you can develop yourself, that you can grow, discover your strengths, your resilience to achieve those dreams. And if you don't do it, you'll never find out. You're always gonna live your life in fear and in the uncertainty that, you could have, maybe you should have, but you never did it. So the ultimate message behind it is pick yourself up, get out there and go for it. Because you can, if you truly want to.
And I don't know if it's such because I haven't read it, but I'm absolutely going to.
All right.
Sometimes I go, well, I might do, but now I'm definitely going to. So that's great.
The one thing that everybody say, it's a very fast and entertaining read. So, there's a lot of people that said, I picked it up in the morning with my coffee and it's 7 p.m. at night and I'm still in it. And the next morning I finished it. So if you dive in, in a day or two, you're gonna dive in and swallow it.
There's a few books like that. I wrote a book that is a little bit too heavy. I think I've even when I read, it's a great book, but you've got to be committed. So I think yours is, I get it.
You got to open up a window.
A little bit, but I think I was trying to prove something, but no, I get it, and that's really powerful. I'm going to stay on topic, but I just like your thoughts on this.
Yeah,
because I've only just thought about it, so I haven't thought this through very well. So, help me calibrate my thinking.
All right.
If there's a distribution curve of people that don't have a lot therefore, in some respects, risk is not that big a deal because I
Right.
haven't really got a lot. Maybe I'm of an age, or maybe I just haven't, I'm young yet and I haven't got anything to lose, or maybe I've just lost everything, so I haven't got anything to lose. So risk is not so risky.
Yeah.
And there are people that have achieved a great deal right at the other end. And in terms of their financial risk, I've got money in the bank.
Right.
Maybe not Maserati money, but I can, if I just downgrade and live half sensibly, I'm good.
Yes.
So I can now go and do anything I like as well, because I'm not really at risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can understand how both ends of those spectrum can find it. I wouldn't use the word easier, but there's one hurdle that's not there to the great extent that I think the majority live in, which is I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I haven't got enough money to do what I want, but I'm definitely earning money to live at a standard.
Right.
And I've got maybe
what do I do? Right.
And I've got other people in my life who have it. So I might go, yeah, I'm going to live in a tent for a year, but I'm not going to explain that to my 12-year-old or to my other half. So I think there's a vast portion of people in the middle, which is why
the gray area.
Yeah. And I just wonder your thoughts on appealing to the person that intellectually gets it, is even stimulated by it.
Right.
And yet their fear is around loss because they're not at the no risk zones of I've got nothing, so it's easy, and I've got a load. So do you know what? In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, I got to tell you, it's a very good question and very tricky question because it can really go either way.
Yeah.
My thought is the fact that, well, I start saying that we are not bound by our circumstances. Of course, we think we are. Of course, you say, I come from poverty and I don't have opportunities. But if you truly want, you make your opportunities. On the other hand, you have people that are in the comfort zone. They have what they need. They have what they, the comfort in life, the securities in life. And so it might feel as if you have a greater chance because, as you say, you got your shoulders covered, so you can go for it. In my opinion, it comes down to personal situation and personal choices. So I cannot say this is easier, this is harder, because it really comes down to the single experience. And I would say also the way we were raised, because of course, the social construct and the cultural boundaries have a great effects on us. There are certain things that certain cultures wouldn't even entertain, and there are things that other cultures just do at ease. So I would say it can go very much either or. If you have no other options, if you're in poverty, you have that push of saying, I have to make it. I have to do it. I'll do whatever it takes because this is my life and I have to make it. I have to make something out of it for the best of me, for the best of my family and those around me. That's a great starting point. But of course, it throws a lot more risks because again, you don't have your shoulders covered. So you put yourself out there, and the time that you take to develop yourself into an actual, whatever endeavor you're undertaking and making into an actual career that you can get money out of and making a living, of course, it's going to require a certain amount of time. It's very hard to start out of the gate and be successful right away. I'm not saying it's impossible, but on average, it's going to require a few years, or at least it did for me. That transition took about 3, 4, 5 years to be able to say, okay, I'm dropping this industry, which was giving me a great amount of financial, reward. But now I'm developing myself in a completely different way. The money, from sponsors and all of that didn't start coming in and allow me to say that I'm a professional runner after about 3, 4, 5 years.
So just to pause for a second, there's something really valuable in saying, you don't have to do it this afternoon at 5 o'clock.
No.
It's all right.
There's no timeline.
It's okay to run two horses at the same time.
Yeah. And that's what I had to do, keep my feet in different shoes for a certain amount of time.
That's very important to some people, I think. That kind of, I think the phrase for it now is, in modern parlance, a side hustle. But to have something going on that you're putting energy into with the intent that it reaches a crisis where, okay, now I've got to make a decision.
That's right. I think, it requires a great deal of commitment, a great deal of passion, of course, that needs to fuel all of the hardship that you go through. I went through all of that. All of that, and I experienced it. That's why I think it's absolutely, you need to be driven by that passion. You need to be inspired by what you do, and you need to be motivated to reach that greater goal, because there are going to be sleepless nights. There are going to be a lot of setbacks. There's going to be a lot of failures along the way, and failing along the way. We already heard this a million times. Failure doesn't make you a failure. Failure is just a necessary learning step to better yourself and achieve greater things along the way. On the other hand, coming back to do your question, of course, if you have money in the bank and you don't have any worries on a financial level, then it could be easier. But are you motivated enough? Is it necessary enough? I'll do it. If it goes well, it goes well. If not, I'm okay. So that to me can be a restraint.
Interesting. Good. Yeah.
You have the opportunity, but you're not put against the wall that you have to do it. So here, as I said, you start from a better standpoint, but is your motivation strong enough? If you come from nothing, it's the only way out. And so you'll give it your all. But again, it brings up a lot more hardship. It's, as I said, it can go either way. And eventually the answer comes down to the single experience.
So there's something, again, here about clarity. There's something here about how real is this for you? Is it a would like to have or a must have? And I'd like to have a six pack. Right?
You gotta do 1,000 abs a day. Are you gonna do it?
No, because I don't need to have a six pack.
That's it. That comes to personal choices.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. So it's making it. If there isn't a fire there, because I think once you are in a position of relative first world comfort, let's just say that, because even the worst of us are still probably okay, right? We've still got a microwave in the kitchen and
you got a roof over your head. You're already way ahead of a lot. And food in the fridge, you're ahead of a lot of people.
Exactly. So the reality is we are real, but things may get a hell of a lot harder while you're running two horses at the same time. The work that you're going to have to put in, the conversations that you're going to have, the balancing act with family and all that. It's going to get intense, because most people can't just walk out of where they are with a couple of months of savings in the bank and say, right, off we go. No, you're going to have to build things up. So that recognizing, the wanting it, the needing it, and then realizing, what am I about to say yes to myself?
You got to be careful what you choose.
Yeah.
And where you get yourself into. Yep.
Yeah. And also, are others around me prepared to support me? Because if I'm going to turn around to family and say, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do, I'd like to do this instead, people go, oh, fine. Yeah, that'll mean I'll see a lot less of you. It'll mean I'll be, whoa, hold on. Yeah, have we contracted with our support group, I guess, to pull us back if we've gone too far, but also to support us with understanding if we're trying to do something that's a little bit exceptional in our lives at this moment?
Yeah.
That's important, I would guess.
To be honest with you, what I learned along the way is that growth only happens in solitude.
Okay.
in my opinion.
Tell me about that.
The reason is because nobody will truly understand what you feel inside and what goes on in your brain, what goes on within you, what calls you. I mean, we often stress the power of the mind, but I think there's a higher self inside of us that dictates our dreams and our directions in life. And doesn't matter how good of a parenting you've got, doesn't matter how good of a support system you've got, friends and partners and whatnot. I think that at any level, if you want to achieve something for yourself, you only have to develop it for yourself and by yourself. For the fact that as I said, nobody will ever understand it truly. Everybody's always gonna have something to say about it, which eventually is gonna shake your stability, your center, because other people's opinions are worthwhile to a certain point, but in my opinion, they're just noise and unnecessary influence that can most often be negative, because they're always going to be naysayers. They're going to be like, oh, it's never been done before. It's impossible. You're not going to do that. Why would you do that? Why would you put so much discomfort in your life? Why would you risk that? Why would you do this? These are just all things that get planted in your head, and the seed of hope began to fade. The faith, not hope, the faith began to fade. And when you start doubting yourself, you're already bound to not succeed. I don't want to say fail, but not succeed, because there's always that gray area in between where you could achieve great things, but then you held back. And so you just stay in that zone and never really go wholeheartedly for it. And I speak of this out of experience, because when I first started my journey, you can imagine I was still very much in that industry with that group of people. And everybody was like, you're just crazy. Why would you live this whole life and lifestyle? And, I got to tell you, on a financial level, I was living pretty comfortably. And it's like, why would you put yourself out there, give up this to pursue this nonsense, right? So if I gave voice to those thoughts, I would have stayed where I was, because I would have never allowed myself to venture out there and find out for myself that I was capable of pursuing whatever I set out to do. And the same thing with my parents. My parents, got to tell you, they are the most supportive and loving parents I could have asked for. We had a wonderful relationship growing up, and still to the day, we speak every single day for an hour or more. We have a great relationship. And I couldn't ask for better. But in that specific moment, their doubts and fears were only interfering with my direction. And so I needed to cut all of that out to be able to truly listen to myself. Here we're almost talking about taking a step back. And that's what you're allowed to do in meditation, right? Meditation, you bring your focus to the center. You bring the focus inward, because, let's face it, in every single day of our life, we're always pushing our energy outward, dealing with outside influences. The partner's thoughts, emails, calls, TV, news, radios, blah, 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 blah. It's all noise. It's all outside influences. And I'm not saying they're worthwhile, but they always take away the focus from what you need to focus, which is you, the inner self, the inner voice. If you never take a step back to listen to it, you'll never find clarity. So in many ways, solitude, meditation, whatever you want to do, are a necessary part to growth, because it allows yourself to listen to yourself, kind of gauge and see where you need to go. And then from that moment on, then you can just get up and walk the walk.
So there's a know thyself element here.
It's the most important.
Yeah, it's not selfish to, you could be being selfish, but you calibrating yourself, you giving yourself personal review, you
Yeah.
asking yourself, what's the path I'm on, and getting attuned to, just like physically, you might know if your hamstring's not quite right or
right,
whatever. It's attuning to that inner dialogue and saying, no, like in exercise, if you push through when you should be resting, short term you may benefit, long term you're going to damage yourself. So emotionally, same thing. Look, if I just push on through here, where does this ultimately take me? So that and it's one of the things with leaders that I have really come to understand is, where is your time for you? Where is that personal space where you can sit with yourself? Not even with your family, not even with your children. I mean, make time for family, of course, but you. And I don't just mean driving to work. You've got a 30-minute moment of quietness. But literally, it could just be driving off to a Starbucks that you've never been to and sitting there with a coffee and having an hour. And not thinking about work and not thinking about even the family, but thinking about you. And I think I'm hearing that in if you don't have that finger on the pulse with yourself, ultimately, it's always going to be harder.
It's absolutely going to be harder because you're never going to find the clarity that you need. Unfortunately, we live in a society that stresses the power of the mind and identifies itself with, a lot of people identify themselves with their thoughts. And, here I'm here to say I couldn't disagree with Descartes more. I don't think, therefore I am. Thoughts are just clouds in the sky, but you are greater than the clouds. You're not your thoughts. I don't think we are our minds. I mean, we have something deeper inside that we want to call it the heart, the soul, the spirit, whatever. And that is what we keep on shoving down and never allow to explore that realm of ourselves. That's to me the greatest power that we have, because once we of course we know now that we can transcend our physicality, and we always stress in our society, we keep on stressing the power of the mind. But as long as you're driven by the mind, you're always going to be on a path of resistance. Everything you do, the mind is a trickster. On an evolutionary standpoint, is always going to chase the easy way out. It's going to chase the comfort. It's going to always hold you back, because the moment things get hard, you're going to resist that. You're going to try to find a way. And then here, yes, the power of the mind is good because you can endure that. But even that has a limit. And I think that it's only transcending the mind and tapping into the higher self that you allow yourself to truly achieve extraordinary things, because you're no longer driven by your thoughts and your ego. You're driven by something greater that calls you. And we have that innate something within us that we can tap into. When you're driven by the heart, when you're driven by your soul, you become infinite. And doesn't matter how hard it's going to get, doesn't matter how long it's going to take, you have a pull. You're no longer forcing it. You're no longer resisting. You're simply pulled towards that calling. And that becomes, I don't want to say effortless, because it's always going to be hard to push against the current, but it's going to become less of a resistance. You almost enter a state of flow. And once you enter that, again, you become infinite. You have infinite amount of energy to achieve what you set out to do.
I talk about umbrella beliefs, and like an umbrella is bigger than you are.
Yes.
Right. So that's the only way it would work to stop the rain. So when you're in a situation, your children are driving you bonkers, you want to shout at them. But if you believe that the kind of parent you want to be is somebody that doesn't raise their voice to their children, but they're left with no uncertain clarity about the fact that you're not happy, that's fine. But if you believe in something that's bigger than the situation that you're dealing with, it's more of a flow state, because
that's exactly it.
You're in a space of, I already know what I'm about. I've already done the thinking.
Exactly. Yeah, you already paved the road, kind of.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. The vocabularies I know are different, and points of reference are different, but you've got to have something that's bigger than what you're in to hold you on a road that you yourself have chosen.
Yes, it's got to be bigger than yourself. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay.
And in my opinion, that has to come from, and I keep on stressing the heart, the higher self in, for the fact that, again, the mind is always ego driven. The mind is attached to the material. The mind is, if you think about it as a business. Okay. I'm taking away my discipline. Think about it as a business. You open up a business, you're driven by the mind. You start calculating, you start analyzing, you start getting in your head. You're doing it because what is your point? Your point is to making profit, right? You're thinking about the final reward is the profit, the money that you're going to get out of it, the financial. If you come from the heart, you're going to do a business that does something greater than yourself. It's not about the financial reward, but it's a service that you give to others. That's already a different pull. You come from a completely different perspective. And doesn't matter how it's going to get, if you're so driven to do something greater than yourself for bettering the lives of people around you and for bettering the wealth of our species, it doesn't matter how it's going to get, you're going to pull through. And then eventually the financial reward is going to come because it's inevitable. But the drive, the starting point, the motivation, the inspiration is completely different. And nothing will stop you then.
One of the things I talk about is, and the reason I'm saying what I talk about is not to go, oh, it's a better idea. It helps me align my thinking to yours. Is I talk about connection. So I talk about trust, accountability, bravery, and connection. But the big one here is connection, which is that willingness to contribute outside of your own need.
You use the right word, contribution.
Right.
Contribution.
Yes. Right. And if I can believe in that, I think that says to people, your drivers may be also your own, but they're also one of connection. They're also one of enabling me. So you're not trying to win selfishly. You're trying to win with me, which means when you push,
yes,
I get why you're pushing. So I'm more tolerant of that. And if things go wrong, I know you would have tried. So I still trust you. And
yes.
And if I think of who should I work with? Oh, you want to work with that person because the experience I had was of contribution. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm hearing that when you say it's inevitable because the experience of people is one of trust through that lens of that person has an agenda, but I'm in that agenda.
It's self-propelling at that level.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a very positive spiral.
Yeah.
I think the energy that comes from it is absolutely different. It's not about, you don't get jealous of other people's accomplishment at that level. You become, you are happy because there's a growth, and it's a positive, empowering growth that we all experiencing. And the contribution, I think, is the key word for the fact that, again, you're not doing it for the personal, egotistical financial reward. You're doing it because that's your calling, that's your contribution, that's actualizing yourself at a greater level. And that, to me, is the next step that our society needs to make. Not having a business that destroys the world and kills people because of profit, but actually doing something empowering, doing something that gives us meaning and gives us an opportunity to develop ourselves to the next level of our understanding as a whole. And awareness and consciousness, everything is related.
And I sense it's almost a completely different podcast. And as I start to bring this one to a subtle end, people talk to me, they say to me, Guy, how do I have more presence? How do I have more impact and more gravitas? And back in the day, at 52, but when I was in my 20s, it used to be about power stances and never changing your opinion and speaking.
Right.
And they teach the linguistics.
Being tough.
Yeah, the linguistics of tonal control and anchoring in the room, and it was all contrived and Machiavellian, and you could say it's a craft, but it was learning how to manifest that experience for people.
Yeah.
And actually you can completely circumnavigate all of that by actually having purpose that people can connect to, actually having a sense of contribution that people can trust. And
then you worded it way better than I could.
Well, I doubt it, but thank you. But the point is then you don't have to be anything other than you.
Yeah.
And you can be at ease, you can relax. You don't need a 3-piece suit to look impressive. You don't need to, except you just are impressive because people go, I get it. I
represent something. You represent something without trying to do it.
Which is lacking a lot in the world. And I think as people look around at all the people that should be the people that we can look to, what we're seeing is manifested characterization, isn't it? It's a caricature of something rather than something I truly believe in. So
as you said, it's I don't want to say it in a bad way, but it's an old belief. It's an old way of thinking. And I think we're coming to the point right now that thanks to experiences and examples that are all around us, I think there is a new trend. There is a new understanding. There is a new a new way of thinking that is the next step. It's evolution of ourselves and the society around us. So I think that slowly we're getting there. That slowly there is this raise of awareness. There is this raise of consciousness and understanding of what we can do as beings for the better of the whole.
So listen, I'm going to start to bring us to an end. Your book, Ultra Top Model to Top Ultra Runner, I'm going to put in the link in what the episode description.
Thank you.
There it is. Definitely go and read it. I'm going to leave you with a little something. I wrote it down, and
right.
I don't know why I'm doing this, but I feel as if we bonded now, and I can share it with you. Which is,
wonderful.
You alluded to the Descartes. So you said, "I think, therefore I am." Right, which I'm going to add a little something. I think, therefore I am. I feel, therefore we are.
Amen. Boom. Boom. Drop the mic.
And I'm out of here, suckers.
That's actually wonderful. It's what the world's need. It's what the world's need right now. We don't need any more leaders on a financial material level. We need spiritual leaders nowadays to raise that level of consciousness, and that will allow every one of us to live a better life more harmoniously.
And what I like about you is the caricature of spiritual leader does nobody any good, right? Somebody that has spirit and can lead. Yeah. That's fine, right? And I think you fulfill that criteria. You're not offering yourself in some messianic kind of approach.
I don't need to wear an orange robe or something.
Exactly. But actually, guess what? I've got a perspective. I stand for something, and I'm offering myself as a true version of myself. Well, that's spiritual leadership, I think. So I buy into that big time. So on that note, you've been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Guy, it's been a wonderful pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today.
Well, I'm going to press stop and we'll keep chatting for a few moments. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share so others get to hear about us, and subscribe so you keep up to date on new episodes. Also visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with me and find out more about executive coaching, team effectiveness, and changing culture. Oh, and of course you can buy my book, Living Brave Leadership, on Amazon. So on that note, see you soon.